Anissa, you joined just in time for me to make you co-host, so you can let people in.
Okay, then.
Thank you for accepting the voluntelling. All right, we're recording, folks. Hello, everyone, and thank you for your patience as we get all of our tech sorted out very, very quickly. Very happy to welcome you to probably what's going to be your last CSW 67 parallel event. This one is hosted by Equality Bahamas, which promotes women's and LGBTQI plus people's rights as human rights. And this session is all about feminist technological connections. And we're really excited to have an incredible panel of speakers with us today. They will each tell you a little bit about themselves before they answer the first question that's posed to them, but we'll also make sure that you have access to their bios in the recording, the captions of all the recordings on Facebook and YouTube. We'll also post them on our Facebook page, so it's easy for you to access and learn a little bit more about them. Just for you to know, we are a pro-woman, pro-LGBTQI+, pro-migrant, pro-disabilities organization. We won't tolerate any misogyny, sexism, any type of hostility towards LGBTQI+ people, ableism, none of that stuff. We have a zero warning policy. So once it happens, particularly on the internet, you'll be booted from the space. And hopefully someone else will be able to teach you a lesson because we don't have the time for it. We are going to move right into the session. Please be aware that it is being recorded. It is being streamed live to Facebook. Feel free to participate through those comment mechanisms. So to get us started in talking about technology and how we use it, I'm turning to Antonia from the Global Campaign for Equal Nationality Rights to tell us how the campaign is using technology to connect people across different countries and how they're working on the issue of gender unequal nationality law across countries and keeping the coalition alive and active. So Antonia, just give her 1 minute to get up here to the podium.
Good evening, everybody. And thank you, Alicia, for having me here this evening. I'm really excited actually to be ending the 2 weeks on a high note, I would say, and a positive way of using technology, because of course we know there's so many harms with tech facilitated gender-based violence and so on, but to really focus on the positive side now is wonderful. So maybe I should just introduce myself. As Alicia asked, I'm the global lead for legal equality at Equality Now, which is an international human rights organization. And we're one of the founding steering committee members of the Global Campaign for Equal Nationality Rights. And the Global Campaign for Equal Nationality Rights really mobilizes international action to end discrimination in nationality laws. And that's about still 50 countries that have sex discriminatory nationality laws. That's around a quarter of the world. So it still affects a huge population of women. So what we've seen in the last few years is really the advantage of using technology for building solidarity around this issue, for connecting activists, but also affected people, because obviously affected people might be rendered stateless, not have travel documents, not be able to come to the UN or other sort of organizing spaces. So technology has been really wonderful for our campaign in that sense. So I'll just give a few examples of how we've been using WhatsApp and other platforms. In terms of WhatsApp, we've been using it both thematically with youth and then also regionally connecting activists in regions like the Middle East and North Africa, and also Africa, where they face similar discriminatory legal issues. We've also been using Zoom to hold workshops, roundtables, training of trainers for youth. So that's been really a successful aspect of our program. And then, of course, with the pandemic, we've been able to host online discussions, reach out to people that we never would have been able to reach in the past, mainly because of travel costs, sort of logistical reasons. And last year, we were able to bring together 40 activists all over Africa to advocate around the issue, as well as in MENA. And of course, mobilizing, that's the second most important aspect of technology for us, not just building that solidarity, but actually using online petitions, really raising awareness with government officials, as well as UN agencies, member states. It's been really fantastic to see our local partners, such as Family Frontiers in Malaysia, has done an amazing series of Instagram stories, really highlighting the impact of these laws and how women and girls are affected. And in terms of sort of keeping the passion alive, I think in this long-term work, building those relationships online has been incredible. This work is ongoing. We've had this coalition now for almost a decade, and we have seen almost 20 reforms, either full or partial legal reforms in these countries, which is really quite impactful. And I think what's kept that going, that momentum going, is these connections technologically. And then, of course, coming together in person in those key moments and strategizing about how to keep the work going is also equally important. But having those in-between moments using that technology is really key to keep those connections alive. So really, just to finally say that I'm, again, so glad and happy to hear about how other organizations have been using technology to promote their work and really see those legal changes and other policy changes that really make a difference in women and girls' lives. So thank you again for having me, and I'm looking forward to your questions and the discussion.
Thank you so much, Antonia. I think it's really great to hear about uses of tech, not just as its own solution, but as something that bolsters work that's already ongoing in person and within local communities. I think a lot of times technology is presented as the answer or the new way to do the work, rather than, as you put it, Antonia, the in-between moments to kind of keep that momentum going. Salote, what have you seen with the work of partners at UUSC? What have they been doing, particularly since the COVID-19 pandemic? And how are you seeing tech being used within the regions that you're working in? Do you see any similarities with what Antonia talked about with the global campaign, or anything different that you'd like to point out?
Thank you, Alicia. Hi, everyone. I hope you can all hear me. My name is Salote Soqo, and I am the Director of Advocacy in Global Displacement at the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee. I'm also a Pacific Islander, an Indigenous woman, and I'm so proud to be supporting Alicia in this side event. Yeah, a lot of what Antonia described resonates with our partners as well. During COVID-19, we saw a lot of sort of just communication problems, learning about how our partners were doing during the COVID crisis, and sort of understanding how to respond, as a grant maker, how to respond in our advocacy, especially as things were sort of restricted, movement was restricted. And where our partners who are mostly living in rural areas around the world already have barriers in how to access communication. I think what really, made sure that we were approaching the situation through a human rights lens was just sort of grounding ourselves back as a funder, grounding ourselves back to the principles of of human rights that we adhere to in all our work. Article 19 of the United Nations Declaration on Human Rights guarantees the freedom of expression, the freedom of opinion of every individual, and that implies the right to communicate and reliably access forms of communication. And so communication is also key in making sure that all human rights are adhered to. You need to communicate to ensure that the right to water, the right to food, the right to housing. You also need a communication in order for impacted communities to defend their rights with their governments in their democracies at the United Nations. So making sure that we put those principles ahead, in the forefront during a crisis, a global pandemic, to make sure that our partners got the support that they needed in that time, including support to communicate with their governments, with funders, with us, with the outside world, was really key in how we sort of approached the COVID-19 pandemic. And so that's still a priority to today. We also have partners who are people with disabilities. They call themselves people with strong people in one part of the world, in Kiribati. So, for in their situation, there are actual communication disabilities that they experience on a daily basis. So thinking about sort of what happens when you're cut out from the outside world because of a global pandemic, that really challenged us as a funder to find a way to make sure that their rights as people living with disabilities and their right to communicate, their right to freedom of expression and opinion in that moment was guaranteed. So we then, looked at other ways, non-traditional ways of communicating, and that involved WhatsApp. Facebook Messenger is really something that our Pacific partners have access to than any other app. So we went to that in that direction. We use Signal with a lot of our partners, particularly in countries where political dissidents are surveilled by their own governments using the very technology that we're trying our partners to use. And so it's very sensitive. We have to, like I mentioned, approach it from the principles of human rights and sort of care and being sensitive to the situations and contexts that our partners are in. So that was sort of our approach. And I'm so glad that we're talking about technology today. As an Indigenous woman, I know that we are underrepresented in how we develop technology. I think only 0.0005% of Indigenous women are in tech. So, we have Indigenous partners all around the world. How can we use a technology that we are not part of creating? And so that is the sort of the systemic challenge, right, that we're faced with. We are already barred from participating in our own democracies. We are not recognized as a part of a group of people. Our humanity is not, regarded as valuable. So when it comes to digital tech, we know that we're in this digital world now, right, where everything is around how we communicate digitally and how we can access technology, but we're not part of creating that solution. So that's something that I think as funders, as philanthropic funders, really need to be looking at, because there's not enough funding opportunities. These things are very cost prohibitive for women like us. So yeah, I'll end there, and I'm looking forward to further questions.
Thank you, Salote. I think there's so much to dig into with what you shared about making that pivot and understanding that the sort of technology and the tools that we might be accustomed to using in certain parts of the world might not work for other people. And imposing that is not helpful for anyone, but there are other tools that might work in different spaces. I know that when a couple of different things were being developed and being used on websites, we realized that there were places that the internet, the strength of the internet would not support certain kinds of websites. And so people started developing bots that would work on messaging apps like Telegram, where you can access information like sexual and reproductive health and rights. You just sort of type in, and this, I guess it's like AI would respond to you and give you the information that you need. So that's what we need, is to be able to make those pivots and to listen to the people that we're supposed to be serving to hear what tools are working. And we need that support to come from funders. Funders need to be prepared to be flexible when things change and when situations shift. And I'm also glad that you brought up the Indigenous community, because we're going to hear from Angela, who is in Kenya and very graciously stayed up past 1 a.m. to be able to join our conversation. Thank you so much, Angela. I don't know, you don't feel pressured to come on video if you don't want to. But living in an Indigenous community, and you can tell us a little bit more about that community when you come on, do you have other ideas about what constitutes technology? Because I know we tend to think a lot about the internet and computers and tablets and phones, but how else can technology look? And does technology exist outside of these things that we think about all the time, internet connections and devices? What does it look like within your community?
Thank you so much, Alicia, and everyone. So my name is Angela from Kenya, East Africa. So I work for an organization called Masai Mara Wildlife Conservancy Association. So it's a conservation organization of biodiversity and livelihoods. Can you hear me, Alicia?
I can hear you, Angela.
Okay.
Alicia's muted. I don't know. Please go.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
we can hear you. Please go
Thanks,
ahead.
Laura. So, so I work for an organization that is in East Africa, Kenya, the south part of Kenya. So when you think about technology, it's very, it's at its basic, because when most members of this community where I work for, it's a pastoralist community, it's a Maasai community, are illiterate. So most of them have not gone to school, and literacy and numeracy are very low. You're looking at almost 77% of the population, and especially women not having gone to school. So technology, we look at technology at its basic. And whether you have a smartphone or not, you cannot even access internet on your own phone because there's no signal and such things. So for technology, we are looking at and how we are trying to harness the power of technology. We are looking at very, very basic and limited things. And specifically while working with women, we are looking at reporting cases of gender-based violence. These are communities that still practice, female genital mutilation, child marriages, and these are vices that have already been banned in the country. So you'll find, the government of Kenya has provided toll-free numbers where you can report these cases, but most of the communities don't, because of the access to a phone or even signal to make these calls. So and then it's also a very patriarchal community. So some of these are technological innovations, like just calling a toll-free number and someone on the other end picks and comes and maybe rescue a child who is getting married, it works very well, because there is that you remain anonymous and no one will know who reported the case, because if you walk, let's say, to an administration, you might face consequences in the community. We also trying to harness the power of communication through health services, and you find most women are still a lot of births. Women are having children without unskilled health practitioner. So there is when you first go for your antenatal care, you are sent a reminder, and maybe when your kids come back to school in the evening, they can check, and then they can tell you need to go to the hospital. Maybe this week the doctor says you should be getting ready to give birth, and all that. And then also financial literacy, and in Kenya and in South Africa, there is a huge movement on financial literacy and digital money, where people can save using their phone, they can send their money to the bank and all that. So we find most women who are involved in small businesses use the digital platforms to either save or send money and all that. So in a nutshell, basically, that is what we we are trying to work with the communication, but of course with a lot of barriers. Most women don't own phone, most women don't read, and also the signal in some of the parts of the areas we work with are very limited, and then so you'll have maybe to walk a distance to get a signal to make a call and all that. But when you're looking at internet, computers, and all that, that's still a far-reach dream for most women, indigenous women in Kenya we work with. So I'll stop there, and then I wait for your question. And thank you so much, Alicia, for welcoming me to this meeting.
Thank you, Angela. I think that's really useful feedback, because I think a lot of times we talk about telephones as low tech and as being very accessible to everyone, but not thinking about the signal and that not being available to people in some communities as well. So what do we do outside of all of these devices, no matter how low tech we're considering them to be? And I'm thinking maybe, Laura, you have some ideas about this through your work with Global Rights for Women and conducting research in different parts of the world and trying to reach groups of people that are in situations of vulnerability, people who are migrants who you might not be able to find through the usual sort of mechanisms and networks, as well as rural women who might be harder to reach, especially in places that are very, very large, or places like the Bahamas that are archipelagos and you need planes and boats to get to different places. What has that looked like for GRW, and have you been using more or less technology in the last few years to be able to reach these groups of people?
Thanks, Alicia. Can you hear me? Thumbs up, yes, shake head. Yep. You can hear me okay? Okay, great. Thanks for the question. And wow, what an honor to be part of this conversation. The only way it could be better is if I could be with you all in New York. You asked me to introduce myself and our organization briefly. First, I want to just acknowledge I'm in Mexico with the grace and care of the Mexican people. So I want to thank them for that, and on Waikura land. But Global Rights for Women is housed in the United States in Minneapolis, Minnesota, on unceded Dakota Anishinaabe land. And we work with legal and systems reforms related to violence against women and girls, or gender-based violence around the world, and in our own communities. I'm the director of systems advocacy. And so to the question, we have done both, like many of the other panelists have said, but maybe I'll just talk a little bit about what we've noticed in our work. So on the one hand, of course, technology has enabled us to do some things that, particularly as the pandemic started, we would not have been able to do. Our typical work pre-pandemic was, we get invited by an organization, a partner organization in a particular community, to look at an issue or about how gender-based violence is being responded to or not, or a particular legal issue. And often the work involves, or we promote consulting with survivors about the impact that of that practice, policy, gap, law, and also with interviewing with key informants, that kind of thing, in terms of pondering any particular change or improvement. So pre-COVID, we feel like we get so much context by traveling, whether it's in a portion of our own communities or in another country, and it gives us so much context. Well, COVID made that not possible, as we got affected, as everyone did. And so we had to adapt. And I'll give a couple of examples of that, maybe, in what we did, and then in the more conversation time, if people want more specifics, I can give them. But it is a mixed story, much like all the other panelists have said. On the one hand, we couldn't travel for survivor consultations. One country in which we worked with the partner organization so that they would actually create and host the consultation. They did the outreach. We talked about what we were needing for our particular project. And then we really talked, we had to push ourselves through thinking about what not being in person, even though Zoom would allow us additional technology, interpretation, the ability to record. We had to think about all the privacy of those kinds of things. But then we also had to think of what shifts when you do that, right? So when you're in person, you have some rapport building time. You connect with someone, you watch how they come in the room, you set up the room to create some welcoming atmosphere, those kinds of things. You can maybe see that their children are with them. When you're online, it's a very different kind of thing to think about how to build some of that rapport before inviting someone to talk about difficult, potentially difficult issues. And then also being really aware of where they're coming and going. And we had to really rely and did with our local partners on, informing us of that. So one example is in this particular country we're working in, they said, look, you can't start and end. You can't end at the time that you're thinking about late in the day, because that will literally be unsafe for the women who are going to come to the center to sit in front of a computer. They wouldn't have had their own. That there wasn't, much like Angela talked about, there wasn't that kind of resource, but they were going to come to the program location, but they had to end by a certain time because there would, otherwise they would be in danger for being assaulted when they left. And so that became very important for us to add a series of questions and think about as we worked with sort of remote partners. The good news is, because of technology, we didn't have to, we could still listen to these voices and elevate them and then give them back to the principals in ministries that were asking for that feedback. In another location and some others, as the pandemic shifted and changed, of course, we were able to travel. Some of the other technology we use for that, as technology has gotten better and better, are things like when survivors are willing, we record the session on our phone. There's good apps and good microphones for doing that. That really helps. We really like to be able to transcribe, so we actually get the quotes and carry that forward. But of course, now we need to think about where that information is stored, who has access, what our protocols are for that, right? So there's that side of it as well. When we did that, I gave the example before of, here's what I want to say. We might sometimes then think, to your point about funders, oh, well, the technology is there. You don't need to send as many people on that kind of outing to go hear from survivors because you're recording. Well, the problem with that thinking is, right? And we've had this experience, somebody comes with their child, right? Or somebody comes early or late, and there needs to be other people to welcome them or ensure the space is safe. So we've learned that you can't, while technology can be an aid, kind of what we've been talking about with all the panelists, you have to, we've tried to stay very careful about not making overly broad assumptions about, those in-person pieces that it would replace, and instead help ourselves and others know, no, we still need, because that eyes-to-eyes, soul-to-soul experience is so important and precious, right? We've had women say, while we're talking about collecting their voices for some other purpose to give feedback, when it's done right, and we've had both the experience actually online as well as in person, survivors say just talking about it here is helping, just breaking this silence, and so that's what you're aiming for, as well as the sort of the do no harm piece. Some of our other work is maybe more with the people who provide services or surveys. We've had a couple nationwide surveys that we've been advisors to in some way. In one instance, it was clear during COVID that the decision was not to knock on doors and to go back old school to calling on a phone. And then we just did the attendant, you missed context clues there as well. And so we had to do a lot of thinking about how to make sure that was really safe, but in some ways, safe words, those kinds of things. But in some ways, I think it freed some folks up to talk in a way they might not have if it had been done differently. In another context, we weren't able to travel at all. And the decision was actually phone calling wouldn't work in that country because these professionals who are being surveyed were getting phone calls and asking about who they were, where they're located, and that was leading to kidnappings, unfortunately. And so that decision in that country was to, we made use of a software and a free, pretty robust survey system that allowed somebody else to go out and interview them, but do it. That technology allows the answers to be gathered and stored online. A whole series of them allows the survey to show up in multiple languages, whichever languages you need, and then would allow a surveyor to then, when they're back within Wi-Fi range, upload, have that information upload to a database. And so I know that technology and tool is being used in a lot of spaces, particularly conflict spaces, other spaces where Wi-Fi is just not possible, but there's still a desire to gather really useful data. So and then maybe the last example is a kind of a slightly different kind of example, and I'm really going to brag on my colleagues here, but there's a program that Global Rights for Women does with abusers, with men who batter. They're going to be starting a women's program soon as well. And that was just being looked at online right before the pandemic. But when the pandemic hit, they were able to continue that, and figuring out that space has allowed people in rural areas to be part of that kind of work to shift how men think about their power and privilege when they batter. And often that's through a connection through probation. They're ordered, but I know from my colleagues telling that story that they've had some volunteer people who volunteered themselves or asked to join from other parts of the world because they wanted to figure out why they were doing what they're doing. So mixed story, if those examples help, like you've been saying, right? So I think it frees us up to do some things hopefully better and not really be in place of that connection that we hope for. And then we always have to recognize the potential pitfalls. In the US, one last example, in the US, for example, court hearings moved to online. And I had a colleague in another organization talk about coaching a survivor who hadn't told her parents something had happened. And, she's trying to watch the, phone in or answer questions for her restraining order, in a closet. So we have to think about those kinds of pieces that are different when we don't have those spaces. Or even if a survivor can join a hearing, recognizing that we don't just say, oh, dial in, that they may still need someone with them to process the trauma of what it is to see their perpetrator who's joining as well. We've had some of those experiences. So maybe that's a good place to stop and toss it back to you. You're muted for us, Alicia.
Thank you. You talked a lot about different tools, different technological tools and devices that work in completely different contexts. So it sounds like there isn't really one perfect thing that works all the time, right? Like it's not always WhatsApp, it's not always recording something on your phone, but it's listening and paying attention to the people that you're serving, the people that you're getting information from, the people that you're funding, and being in this constant communication. And Salote, you talked earlier about the right to communication. I don't think I've ever thought about freedom of expression in that way, like freedom to communicate, and how important that is to accessing other rights, like you said. And Global Rights for Women is working on ending gender-based violence, and a lot of that is based on gathering research and being able to put together plans, which depends very heavily on communication. So it definitely requires that we think about ways that enable us to connect and share our experiences and our stories in ways that allow us to collect them, save them, record them in any ways that make sense, but also turning them into something else. That's another level of communication, right? Turning them into tools that actually can help us to make the change that we want to see. And I'm sure that as someone who's working with funders, Salote, that you've seen partners use different tactics and different tools to get their work done. And I know there's been a particular focus on climate justice, looking at climate adaptation and mitigation. Have you seen any work by partners in that space, in the climate space, and any tactics or practices that have been useful in connecting with migrant and rural populations in particular?
Thank you so much for that question. Oh, now I'm really loud. Yeah. Well, one of our partners is sitting right here in the audience. I don't know if the folks online can see, but we have a partner in Tuvalu that's really leveraging technology to be able to help their community, which is in a rural area, a rural community in Fiji, to be able to access early warning system. And that, relies on radio waves, and that relies on sort of, I don't know, something in the ethos to be able to help them get the right information, or information that's current about the weather, and to be able to help them to prepare themselves for the oncoming disaster. So I think, that's a very practical tool that we're supporting our partners with, but it's also helping the community to build the capacity to be able to manage their system on their own. Being rural is very difficult. You don't have access to technology. You don't have access to economic markets where you can, produce sustainable source of funding. So being able to seed this community with resources, with funding resources that they're able to use to prepare them for, the looming climate disasters that we're expected to see in the coming years, also, provides the opportunity for communities to build up their own skills to manage that technology system. We're also seeing, different contexts in different countries. In Haiti, there's a crisis after a crisis. There's different layers of crisis that disproportionately affect rural women and girls. And I think we had a side event yesterday where our partner mentioned, we can't have technology without electricity. And that's a common problem, in rural areas almost around the world. So funding climate justice in a country like Haiti for rural women also means supporting their access to renewable energy, their access to electricity, wherever that source comes from. So I think as funders, we have a responsibility to look at the whole system. What is the barrier for rural women in particular, for women who are on the move, who are being forcibly displaced because of the climate injustices that they're facing? What do they need in order to get them the access they need to technological solutions? So funding, power supply, making sure that we're giving general operating support so that they can access data, giving them laptops. That's like the most basic thing. Just give them a piece of technology, but also making sure that you're giving resources so that they can buy data, so that they can fund their electricity bills. And also, of course, to take care of themselves, get them water, food, whatever. Providing general operating support grants is a way to help them find the resources that they need to get what they need. And I think, all funders should just do that. And I think there are other communities where we've seen where they've tried to use our grant, because technology is very expensive and we provide small grants. So, the funds that we provide go to the needs first and then to the other things later. So I think they use it to sort of leverage their access to trainings, digital security training, particularly in this time where all the climate talks are in the global north, and they need to have a seat at the table in order to, inform the discussions about their futures. So just making sure that they have digital security, because some of these communities are also doing this against their own governments. So being able to have digital security in a space that's moving mostly online, but making sure that they are feeling safe in doing that, particularly for rural women, is very important.
Thank you. So many great ideas, great thoughts there, Salote. I think when we think about technology, we tend to think about new. What is new? What can we create next? What's the next big thing? Even if you look at social media, you know, the move from Facebook to Twitter to Instagram to TikTok, the push from photos to video, things are constantly changing. It's always something new. And sometimes I wonder what would happen if we didn't focus on creating something new, and if we look back at what worked before. So my next question, and this one is for all of the panelists, is what would happen if we broaden the way that we think about technology? And if we thought about innovation outside of this box of newness and having to start from scratch, what kind of practices would we maybe go back to? And how might we innovate without depending on cost prohibitive tools? So let's go in the order. Let's go Angela, Antonia, Laura, and then Salote.
Thanks, Alicia. So it's, there's no doubt that technology has become and continue to be, to be a game changer in the world. So when you look at the, with the trends, the obsession with the newness, what is new, what is coming up, you can't help but think about people who have not access with technology at all. When people have moved so far, with the technology from, just as you rightfully have put, there are people who have not interacted with technology even at the basics of it. So, and some of these inequalities are, they're almost unfair to some of these communities, and you just find the world, just moving and living a whole lot of, it can be a continent, it can be, like, for instance, women and all that, because it's clear, for instance, in my community, a pastoralist community, like more men than women have access to technology or have access to even basic technology. So while some of these trends you can't really help, but it's very important to pause and think about, just thinking about the communities that are underserved, that they have been left behind when the basic of of services, such as making a call when there is a gender-based violence and all that, and and even just from whatever level advocate for for inclusion of technology to some of these communities and countries and constituents in different areas, and also looking at how let's say communities and countries are missing out on the opportunities, and especially women, and opportunities that come up with technology. You can easily have access to so much information with a click of a button, and they can be life-changing. You're battling with a lot of problems on reproductive health and all that. So yeah, I look at it in that angle, that from people who don't have access to technology at all, and how they continue to be left behind even in the 21st century, as technology is evolving to be, to be like, or to some people, a day-to-day lifestyle. Thanks, Alicia.
Thank you, Angela. Over to Antonia.
Well, I think I don't know if you could call it a technology exactly, but I think an ancient form, of course, is storytelling. So I think, being able to amplify those survivor voices, giving them a platform and opportunities to tell their stories and how they're impacted is so important. And if it can't be in person in spaces like this, then there's also, of course, performance art, and we've used that as well, so that stories from around the world can be told and heard at the UN and other places as a form of advocacy. So, for example, Sarah Jones does a play called Women Can't Wait around the impact of discriminatory laws and a range of issues, not just nationality, but marital rights, economic status laws, etc. And that's just so powerful to hear her impersonate these women's lives and really give voice to those struggles. So that will be one technique that I think we will continue to use, and yeah, on whatever platform or space that's available.
I'm a big fan of storytelling. I know there's always a lot of focus on the quantitative data and people are always demanding data, but data is all around us, and data, stories are data. And without stories, the data doesn't really mean a whole lot to a whole lot of people. How many times, how long have we been saying 1 in 3? And it's just now at this point, it's just like, yeah, 1 in 3, we know. Laura, are you ready with your innovation?
Well, I don't know if I can say it much better than the two who have gone before me. I was thinking much like Antonia about, you know, when I remember the days when I was starting in the field in the work, and you know, there was one new computer that came to the office, and some people thought they'd lose their jobs because now there was a computer there, and it actually just, you know, increased our work. So I was trying to think with your question, Alicia, you know, what were the things we used? And it was there's something really powerful about coming together, asking, listening, deep listening to each other. And the storytelling part of that, I love the performance art angle. I'm trying to think more and more how to pitch to people that ask us to come in to think in those ways. Like you said, the quantitative is there, or really traditional research methods. And I'm thinking more and more about engagement, you know, and collaborating with artists. Because we all know, even getting that kind of information, you go someplace and can you fill out a survey, or particularly in our work, it's a pretty intimate kind of thing. So if we're trying to reach people who haven't gone to services already or self-identify, I think it really behooves us to think in really creative ways about, you know, one artist I know in a different context, you know, do like bus stop theater, right? Like, so they have people stand at a bus stop and they share some information and work on some level of engagement there. So I'm trying to think in those ways as well. I think that's just really brilliant. Yeah, you know, one definition for people who do organizational change work, and you know, sometimes technology is a pencil or a pen, right? It doesn't have to be so it doesn't have to be the electronic tech stuff. I'm a fan of that stuff and what we can do, but we know in our work that as other panelists have said it, and you probably have all been hearing about for the last 2 weeks, that it's powerful and it creates sort of new challenges. So one place we work in the Pacific region, we were told everybody's on Facebook. They don't often have websites, but everybody's on Facebook. And so we're trying to connect at the same time. You know, that's where it was not intended to be a survivor consultation, but somebody leading us around found out more of what we did and told a really powerful story about, in essence, you know, being exploited online. And a guy she thought really cared about her then showed pictures, and she went to her family and they basically cast her out because they didn't sort of have the context and understand things. So one of the things I would just add, I think I was thinking about, since people before me have spoken so well, is that the particular challenge I think we have, one of the particular challenges I think we have, is that the newness and the chase for the newness for people coming along can mask that the underlying issues around women's rights as human rights, around marginalized issues that we've been working on, they may not look like the same thing to somebody, right? Because that online exploitation or harassment might seem like a new or different kind of problem. And in some ways it is, but we believe, of course, at its core, it's the same issue of entitlement and privilege and misuse of power that is connected to and shows up in lots of different ways. And so one of the things maybe we think too about of is just watching, as you said, that chase for, oh, here's where the young people are all gathering, or here's we have to use this new item, and and just even if we do that, maybe how do we, I don't mean this to be a pun, but really, how do we decode that new shell in a way that helps, still continues to help people see whatever they're experiencing there, at least around gender-based violence, is tied to sort of much older and deeper things, and that yes, we can free up and use whatever needs to fit the context in the moment. So that's just a thought. I'll toss back.
I like that thought, Laura. Thinking about what's the old that's inside this supposed link. That's a really interesting question. I'll be thinking about that for a few weeks. Salote.
Thank you. I was joking to Antonia that I feel the least qualified to be on this panel because I'm totally technologically inept. But as I was thinking about this question, I kept on going back to Mother Earth. You know, she's the original feminist, you know, leader or hero. And I wondered, you know, what would it look like if we went back to our original, you know, before we became modern with technology, and what are the principles that Mother Earth can teach us about how we can use technology more sustainably, how we can use technology more responsibly, and how we can really embed at the beginning, at the core of any innovation, feminist principles that Mother Earth has taught us. And I thought about my ancestors and how we relied on the sun and the moon and the stars to help us navigate our journey throughout the world and throughout time. And I think there's so much to learn from what's around us, you know, the trees, the birds, the worms, the microorganisms and how they sustain each other, but also how they take care of each other. You know, we have, as human beings, due to our anthropogenic activities, have violated Mother Earth. And I think there's a lot to learn about there because technology just doesn't, you know, this mic is made from, I don't know, minerals from Africa. I'm not sure. But there's so much that I think that we need to learn from sort of Mother Earth and the way that Mother Earth sustains itself, revitalizes itself, but also how it takes care of itself. I think those principles need to come back. We need to practice them. We need to relearn them. I think as an Indigenous woman, the most important thing that I want to see in technology is how I can revitalize my language, how I can revitalize my culture for my daughters, my granddaughters, or future generations to come. And I want that embedded in the innovation that we produce today. So those are the, I guess, key criteria that I would love to see as we innovate together for the future.
And Salote had the nerve to come up here and say she feels the least qualified. Can you believe that? Wow. But along those lines, the next thing I really want to ask is what feminist methodologies and practices and connections look like? And Salote, you really started us off with sort of the criteria for that. I'm wondering if others have criteria or sort of what would be the check boxes if you wanted to see if your practices were feminist. I know when I think about communication and, you know, when you go to college and you learn these new terms and you come into contact with different theories, you start using them and quoting bell hooks and Kimberly Crenshaw to people, and you lose people along the way. And it's like asserting your intelligence is more important than actually reaching and communicating with people. And I started to really be very intentional about trying to use language that my great grandmother and my little 8-year-old cousin would both be able to understand. And now I'm thinking, should I take that same approach to uses of technology and the ways that we innovate? What does that look like? Is it forcing people toward WhatsApp? Is it like the Bahamas had a few years ago? They thought it was very innovative and great to have everyone on social assistance get these these like debit cards, and they would basically earn points. You can get more money if you made sure that your child didn't miss any days of school. And it was supposed to be very encouraging. And I thought, that's great, putting more burden on mothers that have low incomes and are already struggling to make ends meet. That's great. You have more money available, but you're going to make them earn it. Gross. So I'm wondering, do you have ideas about what it looks like to center people in the practices and the policies and the methods that we use, that we create, that we invite people to? Does anyone have anything to add to Salote's list?
Now I'm going to be thinking about your question for quite a while. One of the things that comes to mind, I'll have to think about it more, but is something that's not too reductionistic, right? Because I think part of what is trying to be upended, and Salote spoke to it so well, is in systems of oppression, it seems to me, or how would I say it to your 8-year-old niece, in things that sap our life and make it harder for us to connect and be fully human. It's these things that sort of compartmentalize our experiences in our worlds and don't allow us to be seen and see others in our complexity. So I can't translate that, of course, to what the app would look like, but I do get hopeful that that in our use of them and how we think about them, yeah, we reach for more of that. If it's just one thought, but it's a good question.
I think it might give you some time to mull it over, and if something comes to you, feel free to share. But do folks who are joining us have any questions, challenges, ideas to share with us in the room or on Zoom in the virtual room? I could hog all the time with these people, but I thought that I would practice feminism.
Hello? Hello?
Hi, we're hearing you. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you for this session. My name is Adekite Tanimo. It's really been an interesting one listening to all the speakers and the particular experience in I think it was talking about the Bahamas and what had been experienced. And I just wanted to add my own voice in about how I like how this session centered on inclusion in technology, that is looking at not just technology of itself, but how does technology affect the women at the margins, the women in the rural areas, or the women who do not have much resources or access as other people have. And I just wanted to say that that kind of holistic picture of technology is really what is needed, and more about looking at the whole life cycle of technology. For instance, there was a panel I attended yesterday that was talking about technology in India and how even women in rural areas where even their rate of enrollment into like using technology was even faster than women in urban areas. And that was because the particular governor of that state was so intent on bridging the gender digital divide that she earmarked a fund, to support women enrolling and, in technology and being able to use technology. She made mention of a key point, which was that if we want to see success in technology use in women, then we have to fund the barriers that limit their access to technology. So in some areas, the barriers may be education, the fact that, they may not be able to read. In some areas, the barriers may be it may be more of social psychological, where women think that maybe there's no place for them there, so that even if you provide the technology, they may not use it. In some areas, so there are all sort of barriers like that. But the point I just wanted to draw out would be that there is a lot to do in telling governments, philanthropists to, really tackle the barriers, either through direct funding or through addressing the other things, like I said, the psychological aspects or many other things like that. And then we'll begin to see results. So just kind of looking at the whole life cycle approach to technological adoption in women. So that's just my submission. But thanks so much to all the panelists, and really, really happy listening to different experiences from Kenya up to the Bahamas, and lots of lived experiences that I don't remember her name now, but she was talking about a lot of things like the barrier when you're not listening, when you're not in person with maybe the subject that you're interviewing, researching, and how that really makes a difference. So thanks again.
Thank you. You brought a really great point, I think, to the conversation with your contribution about not just focusing on thematic areas, but also on specific communities. And when we have this sort of catch-all or it's for everyone approach, it's always going to center the people who have the most and further marginalize the people who are in situations of vulnerability. So it's really important to center people who are the least likely to benefit from something that's, it's just for women. If it's just for women, then we're probably going to leave out the lesbian, bi, trans, queer women. We're probably going to be leaving out women who are experiencing poverty, women who live in rural areas, women with disabilities. But if we focus specifically on these groups, then all women who are in better situations will end up benefiting as well. Does anyone have any other thoughts following that comment? Yes. I don't know how far this will let me go.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Antonia from Cameroon, and I'm very related to want to come. Very fortunate. Unfortunately, myself just got that. We were able to make it to this country. We are coming from a country which has been one part of it has been really affected by the crisis, and so many works have been displaced. Among the discussions we can hear, a lot is about gender violence and also ways of tracking down gender violence. Also, we have talked about issues of women coming to the all of this, when we look at what can make all of this work is why we are here in technology. Because presently there is a lot on that technology actually is but those women and girls who are mostly affected in the class as the community where I come from do not really have of various ways that different organizations have. The different organizations have been able to tackle.
Yeah, because they can't hear online.
Oh,
Yeah. 1 second.
Okay. I will say my name is Clotilda Anjesa, and I'm coming from Cameroon. I'm founder and CEO at the Center for Advocacy in Gender Equality and Action for Development, CAGE, and we're working with women and girls. And I'm saying I'm coming from a community which has been greatly affected by a crisis since 2016. And this has seen so many women and girls being displaced from their communities. And when we talk of women engaging in decision-making or in issues of development that could help them make a better living for themselves, either as indigenous people, as you said, or as refugees, or as displaced IDPs, which is the number we are actually dealing with IDP as they are, is their ability to have the adequate knowledge and to access the right equipment that is needed for the technology that we're talking about. You will bear with me that a woman who has been kidnapped or a woman who is suffering gender-based violence under an abusive husband, who does not have the access, who doesn't understand how she can communicate, even to tell a neighbor she might not even know that she can beg a phone or that she can just sit and text someone, send a text message for someone to help. I would like to appreciate all the various initiatives that the speakers have talked about, but I am a little bit worried about when we talk of grassroots women. I want to say that don't look at me like one, don't look at myself like one. I think we are better off compared to the real grassroots women, the real women on the ground who constitute the populace, the women whom the politicians go down to exploit to get them to vote and put them in the places they are. And many of them do just vote without even knowing what they are doing. So my cry is, when we are designing programs, we should be very intentional about the consideration of grassroots women. They shouldn't be those of us who are coming from the villages who can read and write. They should actually be those women whom we already know that cannot read and write, because there are many. I hear they're talking of giving telephones and things like that. You may give some of those telephones to the women in my community, but I bet you we will still come back to us that we need solar panels to be able to have them recharged, because there's no electricity down in this area. We want to tell that we need a specific kind of VPN or kind of international internet, because one of the ways that we have suffered in the past was even a total shutdown of the internet around the pandemic and at the beginning of the crisis, so that nothing could even be communicated. And when this is back, you know how bad it is for those women and girls who are under abuse. So my cry, as I said, is if we could be a little bit more intentional and get these programs right down. We start by giving them the normal basic literacy education. They need to know how to read and write, and then they get to the level how to use a small telephone and what does it come with. And follow up with others, because I'm happy she talked about people living with disabilities, because when we talk of gender-based violence and how the digital gap exists between, gender digital gap, it is worse gender digital gap to people living with disabilities. So if we are, for instance, what of those who don't see, how do we think they use the telephone? So it's going to be a special kind of education for those who need to use maybe the braille or need to learn how to use the telephone. If you just brought 100 telephones to the local community, you will find out you may have 5 or 10 blind girls or blind women. This means that their own education to use this has to be special, has to be different. When we start doing these things and we start going to design some of these programs with the women in the community and not designing them from outside to bring to them. Don't mind as they are the way they are. If you find time to sit down with them inside their mat rooms, sit down and discuss with them, you'll be shocked as how they will make proposals as to how you can solve their problems that may not even be as expensive as you think. I think what they need is they need to be recognized. They need to come to them at the grassroots level. And so this goes to the funders, all the funders, those who are listening to us in here or out of this place, that there is need to increase funding that is tailored towards grassroots, and that if money is meant to address issues at the grassroots, if we really want to have a digital balanced world we need to send the money down to the grassroots where the work needs to begin. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that contribution. I think we can never be reminded enough that we have to center the communities that we are serving and to see our work as with people, right? Not pointing our work to or at a group of people, but centering in that work. And it really does take more resources and it takes a longer time to do it that way, but it's really valuable to go through that process. Equality Bahamas is a pretty small organization, pretty under-resourced, but when we are putting forward recommendations, we usually go to the community and we create a space for people to come and first define the problem. Because I think a lot of NGOs and policymakers think they know what the problem is, but when you actually talk to the people who are having the experience, their definition of the problem is different, or it might be somewhere else on the timeline or at a different depth. And once we're able to define the problem, then we can start to work together to figure out what that solution is. Again, it's a longer process, but it is really, really so worth it. And one of the examples that I share often is when we were coming up with policy recommendations to end gender-based violence. And we brought a bunch of people together. We put out a survey. We had lots of working groups, lots of sessions where people can come and join virtually in person. And interestingly, most of the people who joined these sessions said, well, we need harsher penalties. People need to go to jail and they need to go to jail for a longer period of time. And when survivors came, they said, that's one of the reasons that I didn't report, because I don't need my children's father to go to jail. I need him to be able to work and to make money and to help to put these children through school and put clothes on their bodies. And the others who felt like they had the answer, they were hushed and they had to understand and kind of be humbled, right? To understand that, oh, maybe I don't really understand the problem. And maybe I don't have the solution. And maybe there are other people who can solve their own problems, because we tend to look at people who need help as weak, and not just weak in body, but weak-minded. And we really have to change that. So thank you for sharing that. Do we have any other thought? Oh, yes, that was quick. We have two. Okay, so back to back. Please come up so that the folks online can hear you.
Thank you very much. I'm called Sarah Duval from Cameroon, founder and CEO of Hope of Africa, where we are more concerned with women's empowerment. Yes, as my sister said, technology is what we try to, because we're trying to bring the world like a global village. In my organization, we have an empowerment center where we work with the internally displaced and gender-based violence survivors. Now, in my own idea, I think that most victims or survivors or women that have undergone through violence or are still going through that, they don't voice it because they are still dependent. And as she said, I don't want my husband to go to jail. I want him to work because she is still dependent. If he goes to jail, what happens to the kids? What happens to her? So we try to look at it in a different dimension. That if we train them, we give them livelihood, train them in skill acquisition, and we give them seed equipment. Now they become independent. Most of them will speak out. Most of them will come out from those abusive relationships because they can take care of themselves and their children. Now, when it comes to technology, Kupo is not only about providing, because you can still give them, for example, talk about giving out cell phones to the grassroots that she felt digital. When you give her a phone, it will need airtime. Internet asset. That's money. Now she calculates that a data bundle is about, let me say, $5. She calculates that $5 will give her a pot of soup for her home. She won't go for that. So she can still have the phone, but she won't use it. She won't put interest in using it because it is more consuming to her, more expensive. So for funders, if we have to make sure that we go with everybody, give them funding, which we must make provision, those bundles, at least for a while. Or in another way to be cost effective, maybe those people that are the beneficiaries of, I don't want to call them beneficiaries because I say they are partners. Okay, because since we have to be accountable to them, you give them something that will also generate income. And that would be like, okay, I'm giving you this business or this seed capital because I want you to always have finance to top up your phone. So she knows that she needs to use the phone. And also when we do, I think I attended a oral side event that you're talking about apps on how to reduce gender-based violence. Yes, that means that for a grassroots movement, for me, it's easy. I will easily understand the technological aspect of all that. But to a grassroots woman, as she said, that doesn't know how to read or write, it's a little bit complicated. Yes, technology is good, but to an extent, it still helps to limit people. Not because we are educated, there are some educated persons that don't still know how to handle a phone or a computer. There is no way. Or you also have to train them, give them self-confidence to know that I can handle this and handle it. So it's all about education, training, and sensitization. And while we work with the grassroots, we should also forget local authorities. They also should be put into it. Because there are some areas some countries that I know that they don't accept internet. If we want to make the world like leave no one behind, how do you approach this kind of community? You need to get the locals, the community leaders involved, for them to know the importance of this technology. And that technology is not just for internet, but they can show them the other use of the internet or the phone. How do you do research? How you could learn other things that will be beneficial to your community. That also will give a plus. Yes, so and funders should learn to be agile in their funding. Because most often you have a fund and the funder is like, it should be this. But when you go on the field, that's not what you see. And what do? There must be that flexibility on how to use the funds. So funders should be agile in their funding as well as in the implementation on the ground, so that things can always be swapped according to. For example, from where I come from, it's a conflict-affected region. There are days I cannot go out, but you have told your funder, I will execute this project this day. But you can't go out, you can be for a week. And because you have a due date, the funder still tells you you're 5 days behind reporting. So they don't take into consideration that you had 5 days or 10 days that you didn't go on the field because of the crisis or the insecurity. So as funders also, they have to be very, very considerate in those looking at all that, like what is happening on the ground, since they are not on the ground. So let the implementers also be able to understand the implementers, those who implement. Thank you very much.
We have another comment in the room. Give us 20 seconds for her to get to the mic.
I'm just gonna share a story because she already spoke on most of the things I wanted to talk about. So I'm not gonna go drag you guys back. Most of the issues she addressed is what we're going through. My name is Patience and I'm the Director of Membership for Women Helping Women, so the Women Empowerment Group. We have a chapter in Canada, here in the US, in Nigeria, and also in Kenya. And there's this parable where I come from that, you don't give someone fish, you teach them how to fish. And last month we had an empowerment section in Nigeria, in Benin City, and we went into Nigeria planning to empower 100 women. Guess what? We had over 250 women show up. And by grace of God, because of the funders that we had, we were able to empower about 250 women by giving them job training, like training them on different snack making and all that stuff. And I just want to share this story just to let people know that our women are resilient, they are hardworking, they think very fast when you give them something to work with. There was a lady that came for the training, and she was trained on pastry making. The first few days, she learned how to make a few of the pastries. She didn't complete her training. The very next day, she went and made some pastries and brought it to the event and was selling to her fellow women that came for the training. And at the end of the program, they get their certification and we give them 20,000 naira, some 50,000 naira to start them up with the business, with whatever they train. So it's not just for you to train them and say, okay, you train, you got your certificate, okay, bye, see you. No, we train them and we give them money to start the business that they train them. But this woman went beyond and started even before she got it. So these are things that encourage us and we to keep on doing what we're doing. And we encourage the funders to also go out to these communities. Like my sister said, go to the grassroots. The government, the money is not going to filter them, believe me. When you go to the grassroots, you go to these NGOs, those that are on the ground working, that is where the most impact will be made and will be felt, because they are the one out there meeting these people and doing the work. Thank you very much for your time.
Wow, thank you everyone for all of your contributions. And we have another one that's on the way up. And we're down to our last 4 minutes. And then we have someone online that wants to say something. So if we could take 1 minute and then we'll go on to someone else.
Hi, everyone. I'm Liliana Quinn, an educationist and the founder and the executive director of Aspire Women Empowerment and Development Organization, as we do, based in Northwest region of Cameroon. Yeah, we're trying to look at technology in enhancing women's empowerment and fighting against gender-based violence. We realize that we talk about gender-based violence. Part of it is because our society is so patriarchal and most girls are limited when it comes to technology. So as an educationist, we are out to encourage more girls to get into STEM so that they can equally occupy some of the challenging jobs that it's considered reserved for the men. When they have some of those challenging jobs, they too have equal pay. They also have equal pay like their male counterparts. But the challenge is when you go to the grassroots, for the past 6 years, we realized that most students don't even go to school in rural communities. They don't even have access to gadgets. They don't even know how to use these gadgets. So it's a huge challenge when we come to technology. So we are here by saying, if we have the opportunities to train people on how to use these technological assets, and if we can also make provision to rural communities on how they can have access to these technological gadgets, I believe it will go a long way to empower girls and even fight gender-based violence and maybe other problems that are associated to lack of information in technology. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And we'll take one more. We have a comment online. Please go ahead, unmute.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. I just want to add that our discourse should not just focus on women as consumers of technology, but also as people that can produce technology. One of the speakers mentioned, who introduced herself as an indigenous woman, mentioned something of what we can learn from the indigenous ways of people of studying the sun and the moon. So I believe that in many communities across the world, they also have their traditional technologies, quote and unquote, that can feed into the kind of technology we produce that will be suitable for them. I know a case of someone who said her language is diglossa, meaning that what is written is not the same as what is spoken. So she was coming up with a technology in which she could preserve the oral language. And that way, many people who were not lettered could still interact with whatever was being done. So just bringing that into the discourse about looking into communities and seeing how their natural technologies or their natural competencies can feed into whatever innovation it is we're making in a way to foster inclusion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're now getting an announcement that we should be shutting down. Just 1 second. I think that was our warning to collect our things, and you don't have to go home, but this is not the place to stay. Well, it is the end of a long 2 weeks for many people. Some people, it might be the 1 week that they're participating, but the CSW can be quite long and quite exhausting. And I'm sure that everyone who works in this building is ready for us to leave. So the end is going to be a little bit more abrupt than planned. But thank you for joining us. I'm going to invite all of our panelists to send their final words by email. And I will share them on our Facebook page. For those of you who are engaging us at Equality Bahamas for the first time, please find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. You can just search Equality Bahamas. And for the social media channels that have handles, it's at Equality242. Thanks again for being here for this conversation. And all of your contributions, as in every space, make it so much deeper and so much more rich and enjoyable, definitely for me, and I'm sure for the speakers as well. Many, many thanks to the speakers for agreeing to participate in this event that we made hybrid so that we could involve more people, and just knowing that the Friday night spot, the last day of CSW, is a really, 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 really tough spot. So extra thanks to everyone who came out and who joined online. Please enjoy the rest of the evening and have a great weekend. That was quite the ending, y'all.